Hi, Gitaprana.
Let's change the camera.
Hi, Gitaprana.
Yes. Okay, so now you see this.
Okay, so theoretically, I'm unmuted.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, you put it there. Okay.
Yeah, we're in the chapel.
So you don't have people just Zooming from their house.
Yes, we do. We have both. We do what's called a hybrid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we usually start with an opening prayer, and we also have a closing prayer.
Mhm.
And Daryl or Eves, I think Eves is Eve. Yeah. Are you leading?
I think Gita's gonna do the.
Okay. Okay. So some people are gonna lead. Some people are gonna lead the opening, and then someone else is gonna lead the closing.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you so much for being with us today. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's been a while, a long while.
Very much long while. Yeah. Good morning. How are you today? Are you ready, Ethan? All right, we're gonna start now. Is that all right with you, Geeta?
Yep.
Prana? All right, here we go.
Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanam Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavati Tamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
May the divine being
Look over us lovingly as a mother and father.
May the divine being
Support and nourish us as a mother and father.
may we have the strength and skill
To study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you.
So are you waiting for me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm killing a little bit of time here. Just one. Usually end at 11?
We begin at 11 and we end at 12. And
12, I mean.
Shankara used to usually end around 11:45 to allow time for questions. So
Okay.
whatever suits you.
Okay. So here at Ridgely, it's also someone is cooking in next door to my office, so I might get some interference here, but hopefully not. It's cold here. I don't know about Atlanta.
So much. Echo.
All right, so I'm assuming that the people there are interested in the Chandi.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm not sure how much people there know about the Devi Mahatmyam. So I'm going to start kind of at the beginning, if that's all right.
Perfect.
And I have to warn you, I had COVID last month, and my voice occasionally cuts out even now. So hopefully that won't happen. All right, so if we're talking about the Devi Mahatmyam, which is the other name for the Chandi, and also known as Saptashati, which means 700 verses. we have to talk about the philosophy behind it, or it just remains a surface story. And there's many kinds of Advaita, as I'm sure you know, non-dualism. And the Devi Mahatmyam, or the Chandi, comes from the tradition that loosely I call Shakta Advaita. And what Shakta means is those who worship the Divine Mother as divine. And there's all kinds of Shaktas in India that typically they get thrown into the category called Tantra. And here we're not talking about the Tantra that is generally understood. We're not talking about, in India, Tantra is usually thought of as black magic. And in the West, the Tantra is often associated with what I call hot tub yoga. In other words, the yoga of sex. But actually, the Tantric tradition is neither. And it's a very, very ancient and sophisticated tradition. And it also happens to be, probably of all the traditions of spirituality that come out of India, the most esoteric. And until recently, the Shakta Advaita, really the Tantrics in particular, had been unwilling to share their tradition because it is very esoteric. And like all Indian spirituality, it is taught in lineages. In other words, by a guru who teaches a disciple, who becomes the guru, who teaches the disciple. And each lineage has their own interpretation, say, for instance, of the Chandi. So there's not one pan understanding all the way through. It's according to lineages. So before I talk about the other Advaita, I want to say that, as Sri Ramakrishna said, all language is uchishta, meaning it's defiled, is literally what it means. That concepts and words will never, ever be able to accurately reach the truth. At best, they're only signposts. And so there can be so many different ways of trying to put realization into language. And as you might know, people used to ask Sri Ramakrishna, well, can you tell what is, when you go into samadhi, what is it? And he would try, but every time he would try, his mind would go out again. And finally, one time, after trying 2 or 3 times, he said, oh, it's no good. The mother has shut me up. Meaning, anything, any philosophy, any teaching will never reach that realization. So with that said, I also have to contrast the Shakta Advaita with Shankara's Advaita. And since we don't have a lot of time, I'm going to cut it short, and it might be kind of confusing. So Advaita, not two. And interestingly, in the Tantric world, not two can mean something besides one. Not two can mean infinitely more than two. So in Shankara's Advaita, the world is an appearance. The Maya is described as an appearance. The world is a dhyasa, a superimposition on the one Brahman, who is without qualities whatsoever, changeless, formless, timeless, etc. But the critical thing here is Brahman, the ultimate reality, does not change. That's the critical thing here. And if it does, then it's consigned to the realm of the superimposition. So in Shankara's philosophy, the world is a vivarta. It's like a mirage. They don't say it is a mirage. They say it's like a mirage. It has no reality of its own. It's ultimately unreal. In Shakta Advaita, they take a different tack. They say, yes, there is this one divine reality that is transcendent of everything. And sometimes in the Shakta world, they call it Brahman, and sometimes they call it Shiva. In fact, more often, they refer to that ultimate reality as Shiva. And in the Shakta Advaita, they will refute Shankara's position that that ultimate reality is not changeless. That saying the ultimate reality cannot change or does not change is to actually limit the limitless. So they say that ultimate reality has infinite power, which is called Shakti. Shakti is from a Sanskrit root meaning shak, to be able. And Shakti can be called power. It also can be called energy. And so that ultimate reality, call it Brahman, call it Shiva, has total freedom, absolute infinite freedom. And in that infinite freedom, it also has infinite freedom to be and become. And when that being and becoming, we can call, say, takes place, they understand that those are just simply infinite changes. And when we're talking here about infinite, we're talking, as Swami Ashokananda used to always remind his congregation, infinite is not a huge number. That it actually means infinite. There's no end at all. So this infinite power to be and become is known as the Devi, as the goddess. And as Sri Ramakrishna said many, many times, Kali and Brahman are one. And this is the main understanding of that Advaita, that this infinite power to be, this infinite power to become, is nothing other than Shiva himself, that Shiva and Shakti are one. They're not two. They are one. But when we talk about the infinite power to be and become, which means infinitely changing, we refer to that as the Devi, as the goddess. And so what that means is that this, unlike Shankara, who says this world is like a mirage, is simply a vivarta, an appearance, in Shakta Advaita, they say this world is an actual transformation of the one. It is real. And it's deliberately real, and it's deliberately exactly the way that it is, because there's infinite ways of being and becoming. And so the Maya in Shakta Advaita is not that the world exists. The Maya, of course, is that in order for the one to become infinite individuals, let's say, that oneness has to be disguised from those individuals. And this is the confusing part, I know, because I have like a Wednesday Zoom class that has been talking about Shakta Advaita for 4 years now. And I know that this is the sticking point, that if the many individuals experienced oneness, those individuals in their individual changing would cease to be in many cases. That individuality, which is nothing other than the mother's being and becoming, would merge back into the one. So the base of it, the base of all individuality, is this hiding oneness from itself. And the way that some, the Kashmir Shaivites, as a matter of fact, say Shiva is dancing hidden in matter. So each being is nothing other than the one, but we, all beings, don't experience that. That all beings are nothing other than the mother being and becoming, but we have a separate ego that we feel we have that hides that. But essentially, we are that. And in that way, the Shakta Advaitins agree with Vedanta. The core is you are that. Tat Tamasi, thou art that. In the difference is you are deliberately that. You are deliberately, you are the mother deliberately being you. And in the being you, that's part of the infinite unfolding. And in every moment, that infinite unfolding gives rise to infinite other choices and infinite other choices and infinite other choices. We have a singular linear experience, and we're not aware that there are infinite possibilities in every moment. And that somewhere and somewhen, those possibilities are manifest. So we experience ourselves according to, let's say, our karma in a certain environment. So the world is the way that it is, and we share some experience of the way the world is because we have some kind of karma that causes us to share a world in a certain way. It's not entirely subjective. In other words, we are not creating the world, but we are part of the creation, and we are part of the creating, although we are largely unaware of that. So the thing to remember is we are deliberately, the mother is deliberately us, right? And I don't mean this generically, I mean this individually. Deliberately Gitaprana, deliberately Jyoti, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That the mother is having a Gitaprana experience. And although Gitaprana might be largely unaware of that fact. So in that whole worldview philosophy fits the Devi Mahatmyam. So it's not just for the Shakta people and all over India, in Kashmir Shaivism, in Nepal, in North India, especially in Bengal, and South India, all over. The Devi Mahatmyam is not just a text that you pull out after Navaratri, after the just ended, during Navaratri. It's a text that is studied and used always. And the understanding of this text is, on the surface, if you're aware of the stories of the Devi Mahatmyam, it looks like, on the totally superficial surface, it looks like tales of the goddess rescuing the gods from the so-called demons, and lots of blood flows and everything. The goddess is victorious in the end. And that's the purely superficial, surface level understanding of the story. But over the decades and actually centuries, this story has acquired many layers of understanding. So I can't go into all of them, but I'm going to pick one story out of the Chandi and kind of try and show you how that works. So Mahatmyam means Mahat, greatness, and Mahatmyam is a hymn that is the glories or the greatness, and in this case, Devi, of the goddess. That's the name of the Devi Mahatmyam. It is 700 verses inside of the Markandeya Purana, which is not about the Devi at all. And instead, inside the Markandeya Purana, someone wants to know who is the such and such Manu of the such and such age, which means Manu means kind of like the soul of the age. Let's just put it that way. The order of the age is really difficult, but that's the actual subject where the Devi Mahatmyam comes in. And inside the Devi Mahatmyam, there are 3 stories and a 4th, which is the story that covers it all. And you will see inside the Devi Mahatmyam, there's a preference for 3s, for triads, all the way through. And so the whole 700 verses of the Devi Mahatmyam are sort of an attempt to answer who is going to be the Manu of the next age. So the characters, well, let me go into the Devi Mahatmyam is often associated with the goddess Durga. But in actuality, the Devi Mahatmyam is really about the Mahadevi, the great goddess, the one with Brahman, one with Shiva. And in the Devi Mahatmyam, it's divided into 3 sections, 3 charitas, and each one of them is dedicated to one of the triad of the different aspects of the great goddess. So there's a whole understanding of those different aspects, but I'll go through it quickly. Mahakali, Mahalakshmi, and Mahasaraswati are the 3 Mahadevis of the Devi Mahatmyam. And these are not the Kali and Lakshmi and Saraswati that are so commonly seen today, especially in India. These are formless principles almost. These are the energies of the divine, of the mother, before any kind of manifestation whatsoever. Primary energies, they are the equivalent, or they embody also the 3 gunas, the 3 qualities that the ancient world understood are working in this universe. So tamas, rajas, and sattva. So tamas, force of inertia; rajas, the active force, the dynamic force; and sattva, the equilibrium. Then they're also associated with a specifically tantric understanding called Icha, Jnana, and Kriya. Intent, knowledge, and action. Although here in the Devi Mahatmyam, they're switched a little bit. So the first section of the Devi Mahatmyam is associated with Mahakali. And in this case, we don't mean the Kali that everyone, as I said, understands. Mahakali is life itself. Mahakali here is embodiment of all kinds. And that doesn't just mean individuals, it means the embodied mountains, the embodied oceans. Embodiment, it's life bursting into being. Because if we really think about it, life is extremely dynamic. and sometimes incredibly violent, and sometimes incredibly gentle, and in between every other kind of thing. It's infinite. It's just the energy behind it is absolutely mind-blowing. And that is life, and that is Mahakali. That is being and becoming, coming into being, coming into form. That's Mahakali associated with intent. And Icha actually means desire, but desire is a word that's got a little bit of whatever you would want to call it. The next section is dedicated to Mahalakshmi. And I'm going to skip over that and go to the third section, which is dedicated to Mahasaraswati, and you'll see why. Mahasaraswati is consciousness, even divine consciousness, individual consciousness, all forms of consciousness. And when Mahakali, life coming into being, and consciousness unite, they become Mahalakshmi, the person, let's say. Let's call it person, but understanding that in this case, all beings are individuals. The individual, that where consciousness and life unite, Mahalakshmi. So, in the Chandi, the Devi embodies herself in 3 different stories. We're going to pick the middle story. But in every story, what happens is a god or the gods get booted out of their position by the asuras. And that means we have to explain that a little bit. So the gods here are symbolic of the energies of the universe. Embodied. Energies meaning the wind, the sun, the rain, everything. And also meaning the energies, the gentle energies, the positive energies, however they may express in each and everything. And so one Sanskrit word for gods is Sura. And so the opposing force to the gods are called Asura, which literally means not gods. So Asura here gets translated almost always into the word demon, but I have a problem with that. And the reason I have a problem with it is it often gets especially in the West, is it gets immediately associated with the concept of demons, say in Christianity. And where the demons are some kind of minions of a concept, a personality of evil known otherwise as Satan, Lucifer, or whatever you want to call it. Because in the Abrahamic traditions, God is good. And so to explain why there's evil in the world, there has to be a concept of something that is not good and actually evil. Thence comes the stories of Lucifer, the fallen angel. In the East, the divine is neither good nor bad. It transcends those concepts, because that's what good and bad are human concepts, and assigned a different kind of understanding depending on the human culture at the time, etc. But the divine is beyond good and evil. The divine just is. And good and evil in the human condition are associated with karmic cause and effect. And there's infinite kinds of beings in the universe. And so these are stories of one kind of being, known, different kinds of beings actually, known as asuras. From now on, I'll call it demons, but know that I don't like that word. The asuras are typically embodiments of negative, destructive qualities. and were born asuras because of past negative, destructive qualities that created a mindset of asuras, just in the same way as the understanding is the gods were born as gods because of positive qualities. And in the Indian tradition, those are not permanent assignments. In other words, the gods also pass away. We're not talking about gods that are put into the position of the transcendent one. We're talking about the gods like Indra. And the demons also pass away, and they can be reborn in other states as other beings. So in these particular stories, though, the demons are in their demon birth. They are pashu. They are fettered. And what are they fettered by? They're fettered by the different kinds of qualities that make for evil behavior. So hatred and fear and anger and pride, like a special pride of position or family or race or whatever. And also the tendency to be secretive and to, you know what the destructive qualities are. That if you want to find out the positive and the destructive qualities, it's practically in every chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. They are listed. So in one sense, the gods represent dharma, the concept of dharma, that which upholds. And the demons are adharma, that which tears down. So now we jump straight to the story. And since it was just Durga Puja, just ended yesterday, I picked the story of Mahisha. So Durga, the god, the Devi in the second story is known as Mahisha Asura Mardini, which gets run together as Mahisha Asura Mardini. So Mahisha, that's his name, Asura, that's what he is, and Mardini means the slayer. So she's the slayer of Mahishasura. And everyone knows, I'm going to jump to this, if you've ever been to Calcutta during Durga Puja or lived in Calcutta, or go on YouTube and watch the endless beautiful videos of pandal hopping in Calcutta right now, you will see the image of Durga as is very commonly known, with many, many arms, standing on Mahisha, who has just become half buffalo, half man, in some cases all man, and sticking him through the heart with a spear. And that's the main, there's other things usually on the altars, but that's the main image. So we have Mahisha. Mahisha is the embodiment of anger. And he has a backstory. It's not in the Chandi. It's in this gigantic book called the Devi Bhagavatam, the Devi Bhagavata Purana. And in fact, all the stories in the Chandi are told in much more detail in that huge Purana. So Mahisha was born into a certain clan of Asuras. And this clan of Asuras were shapeshifters and preferred, for reasons unknown, really, although they could take many shapes, they preferred the form of a buffalo. And when we talk about buffaloes, we're not talking about happy little buffaloes that you see in the zoo. We're talking about big, huge Indian buffaloes with big, huge horns who can be very fierce and not very nice. In other words, powerful, powerful beings. Buffalo, I'll go into it a little bit later, but, and it also tells you right away, because this is a family of, first of all, asuras to begin with, who are born as asuras because of negative tendencies. They take the form of buffaloes because buffaloes are beasts. And so that tells you something about their nature. So in this family of buffaloes, Mahisha was born. But Indra, the king of the gods, led his armies to wherever these asuras lived and slaughtered Mahisha's parents. In fact, ravaged his mother and killed all those buffalo demons. So you can imagine what would be the mindset of the son asura, Mahisha, who saw his entire clan be wiped out by Indra. And he was not happy. And as he grew older, he had one motive: revenge and anger. But he also had all the other negative qualities. So as he grew older, he grew stronger. He also did a lot of austerities and actually was devotee of the mother. And as he grew stronger, he either convinced or forced other demon clans to follow him until he had amassed a huge army. And then his huge army took over all the demon clans, and he was the king of the asuras. And so now he has an army big enough to challenge the gods. He has no trouble challenging the gods, and he throws Indra off his throne and takes it himself. And Indra and the other gods know what to do in that case, because this has already been told to them by the Devi before, and they go running to the Devi. They go running to Mahamaya and ask for help. And so she embodies herself through a series of transformations as the Mahadevi that we know. And what happens next is, the understanding in the story is that each of the gods that represent particular qualities give the Devi their weapons, their part of their being, let's say. But in the Shakta world, in the Tantric world, it's understood that those gods are nothing other than the Devi herself being those gods. And so what is actually happening is she's taking her power back to herself, which she gave to each one of the gods. So say, for instance, Brahma, the creator god, his so-called weapons are a water pot, meaning a kamandalu, meaning which carries holy water, and a mala, a rosary. So those aren't technically weapons, but those are his particular powers. So not all of the Devi's so-called weapons are what we would understand as weapons. Another thing we need to understand when we look at an image like that is whenever there's something that pierces, whether it's a sword, whether it's a spear, that always is immediately understood as being an embodiment of wisdom. And that kind of wisdom that realizes oneness. Or if you want to put it in glib words, the kind of wisdom that realizes God. So the Devi, who has all her powers, her infinite powers, is battling in a huge, long, bloody battle. First, as always, as a good general, Mahisha sacrifices his generals. He sends in his troops, she knocks them all off. He sends in more, she kills them all. And there's a lot of description. The lion that she rides on is the lion of Dharma, of constructive, creative life, of whatever it upholds, as I said. So between herself and her lion and her Shakti friends that she embodied, she destroys entirely Mahisha's army. And Mahisha's army here, and here's the understanding in the tantric world, Mahisha embodies the destructive samskara. Mahisha is embodying destructive, selfish behavior, especially anger. That you can think the power of anger is huge. If you lose your temper, it's really hard to rein in that anger because the power just goes boom. That Mahisha embodies that. And his army embodies the thoughts and feelings that are motivated by that destructive anger and that destructive hatred, by those destructive, they're directed by Mahisha, the embodiment of anger, the embodiment of me, and I'm going to get it. I'm going to be the one. So that kind of powerful, destructive quality, that's Mahisha. And his endless armies that she slays are all these destructive thoughts and behaviors and feelings. So Mahisha is us. Mahisha is the embodiment. We all have these Mahisha tendencies within us. And they arise from that core unknowing of our divine nature. They arise from that core of ego-based experience. So for the Tantrikas, they always understand these stories as stories about the struggle of the spiritual aspirant to overcome or master these tendencies. So the mother has now knocked off all of Mahisha's forces. In other words, illumination is about to happen to Mahisha. So he shapeshifts to get away from her and to overcome her. He starts shapeshifting because that's his power. Shapeshifting, I forgot to say, all these demons can be every form, but shapeshifting is the kind of thing that thoughts and feelings do when me feels threatened. They're shapeshifters, and they can shapeshift right into our spiritual life, and we can be unaware of that. So Mahisha is constantly shapeshifting. They can always take another form, these destructive tendencies. And so she, the Devi, is overcoming him, and he shapeshifts into his powerful buffalo form, his fettered demon form, his beast form, and she comes after him, and he tries to shapeshift back to his human form, let's say. But right as he does it, she stabs him with her spear and kills him. Now here, the understanding clearly is spear equals illumination. That the Devi liberates Mahisha. It's not like she kills him dead and he was no more. He is liberated. So say if you would be in Calcutta during the days of the Durga Puja, Mahisha eventually himself is worshipped because Mahisha has become liberated. And theoretically, that if you look at the images that you will see, say for instance, just happened in Calcutta, Mahisha usually looks pretty kind of angry and fierce and terrifying. But in actuality, in that form, it's the moment where Mahisha realizes. It's the realization of Mahisha. It's not the death of Mahisha. It is the death on the superficial, but it's the realization of Mahisha. And so the story on that level is actually about our realization. That the mother herself, meaning that divine consciousness, in a moment of what we call vidya, in the moment of realization, all ignorance is destroyed. And what happens then, call it liberation, call it realization, call it enlightenment. So when you see that moment of Durga standing on lions, stabbing Mahisha, what you see is that moment of enlightenment. And that moment is our moment. Because it will be divine consciousness in in an instant, and all misunderstanding and ununderstanding, if that's a word, falls away, and we are liberated. So that is the second layer. Now there's a third layer, and to tell you the truth, it's really esoteric. And you really have to be a student in one of the tantric lineages to understand. But there's a third layer of understanding the Devi Mahatmyam that has to do with the movement of energy in the body and the different kinds of sound forms, call them mantras, that are in the vibrational form, the subtle form of the goddess. The energies before they become material, and we perceive them with our five senses. And there's a whole esoteric teaching about the different verses in the Chandi that tell you different mantras secretly and tell the student it's about the movement, like I said, of prana, of life force in the body. Because in the world of the tantrics, they say, if everything is the goddess, why do we need to be liberated? Why do we want to get out of this world? You yogis, you want to escape. But if everything is the goddess, we don't need to get out. We just need to see it. We need to see it as divine. And Sri Ramakrishna talked a lot about this in the sense that he often said that this is nothing other than one. This is nothing other than Brahman, that he called the vision simultaneously on experiencing both oneness and manyness. Sri Ramakrishna called Vijnana, and absolutely was a master of that experience himself. And so he taught in so many ways. But in this case, when he was teaching in the Shakta mode, he was teaching in the mode of that Vijnana, where an aspirant merges with that divine and at the same time still lives in the world and sees the world, literally sees, not intellectually sees, literally sees the world as the mother or as the one. And that's the goal, and that's what these stories, there's 3 stories of the Chandi are about. They start in with the final story, the one of Shumba and Nishumba, is very complicated and has to do with more of removal of ego, sense of me and mine. Here, Mahisha, what I've been talking about, is more a sense of removing destructive emotions. So I hope this made sense in any case. And if you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them if I can.
That was great, Gitaprana. You put it in such a way that it's easy to understand, and I, for one, really appreciate that.
Namaste, Gitaprana ji. This is Shailesh.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for a wonderful talk. You just now said that we should see this world as a mother.
Mhm.
But Vedanta says that we should see this world as unreal.
Yes,
Or so how do we correlate that?
you can't. But these are, I think, these are different philosophies that will not ultimately, that the only way that they ultimately can correlate is that they're both talking about Brahman, the one infinite. That is the foundation, the ground of all being. Beyond that, the two philosophies diverge. And that's why I was saying that we have to remember that these are just philosophies, they're concepts, and all conceptual thinking won't go there. So it's by personal what would you call it, preference, I guess you could say, that, as you know, some people will prefer to be devotionally oriented. Some people will prefer, just by their own nature, to be oriented towards, say, Shankara's Advaita. And actually, in the Shakta tradition, they don't have a problem with either. A lot of the Shaktas are purely devotional. A lot of them are purely intellect-based, but most of them are both. And so you can't correlate them. You can only correlate them at the very top, as it were.
Thank you. Because, you know, from my own spiritual practice, what I've realized is that to see this world unreal, or rather it comes from within, to see this world unreal and seeing our part as an actor and play it and not take it seriously. That has just started come from within me, and so that's what I was asking. Is that I personally prefer to see it as unreal, but yes, there is a mother aspect to it. Thank you.
Somebody else?
Uh, I was
Okay.
thinking about this a few days earlier, and I felt like maybe instead of seeing the world as unreal, maybe I would think about like I am unreal.
This is true. I mean,
Like I don't know what the world is, I don't know what the Brahman is or whatever it is, but I am unreal the way I understand myself.
it's ultimately, it starts with I. That this sense of I is the basis of the Maya here. So the Maya in the Shakta tradition is not that the world is unreal. It's that this sense of separation from everything else that each being feels. That's the Maya. Really, there's only one. And so the core of it is getting at that sense of I. Just like in Vedanta, that maybe with a little bit of a different emphasis, the core, just like in Vedanta, is getting rid of this I-based life. Not getting rid of life itself, but getting rid of this obsession almost with the little me, and installing the idea I am that one, just in the same as Vedanta, that I am that. So to do that, you have to say, well, this little I is unreal. Okay, I don't know whose name is what, but the gentleman in the pink shirt.
Namaste, thank you for the talk. I was wondering if you could talk more about the difference between the formless energy of Mahakali and Mahasaraswati. You said Mahakali is life itself and Mahasaraswati is the consciousness, but isn't life consciousness? So I was a little bit confused on, that dichotomy.
Well, that it's the idea there is that the actual form, actual life, and for there to be life that we know, right, as we know it, that there needs to be consciousness, but there also needs to be some kind of form. And the joining of the two makes the beings we understand to be beings, makes the individuals, and not just individual people, but individual ants, say, for instance, individual mountains. Because Swami Ashokananda was a little bit of a nature mystic. He was if you don't know, he was the Swami in San Francisco, like from the 1930s, and he passed away, I think, in 1969 or 70. But anyway, my family was associated there, and I never met him, but I have heard so many things. And one thing, he was a little bit of a nature mystic, and he used to tell his people, even mountains are conscious. It's just that we haven't got the sense apparatus to understand that or perceive that. And so in the tantric world, there are infinite kinds of life, but we only perceive life on a certain bandwidth with the senses that we have. And so we don't see a lot of it. I mean, we can even know that, say we don't see all the microbes in our body. And when we look at our skin, we don't see all the little guys that are microorganisms running around on our skin. And all the other microorganisms that make up us, and we think we're one unique individual, but actually we're a conglomeration of all kinds of life. So, and consciousness, we know what consciousness is from a human perspective. And we know as we progress in spiritual life, we know there's a deeper and deeper and deeper consciousness. And if we get a glimpse of that oneness, we know there's just one. And it shines through all this. The Upanishad says, it's shining, everything shines. So that's the union of the two, which is Mahalakshmi.
And so I was also curious, like, how the Vedanta notion of the Hiranyagarbha compares to Shaktism.
It's probably, yeah, it has a corresponding, but let's just say the Shakta tradition has a very sophisticated and esoteric way of saying how the one becomes many. Because they don't say, they don't have any idea, that's their main project if they're going to talk about these things, is how does the one become many? How does one split itself, as it were? And just, they say, it will split in increasing from formless into subtle form, subtle form, subtle form, subtle form, subtle form, more subtle, and then towards the material form that we understand. And so Hiranyagarbha is going to correspond with one of those subtle forms. Okay, so what's your name with the glasses? Sorry.
Namaste. My name is Swayam Prabha, and it's Swayam for short. Thank you so much for a wonderful talk. And on behalf of all the devotees, I sincerely hope and pray that you will be able to visit us in person sometime. My question is, when it comes to the ritual aspects, whether it's the chanting or reading, there are some, I would say, opinions or instructions that if we do not do it correctly or pronounce correctly, that there can be negative outcomes. Now, as a householder disciple with so many, I don't have the time to learn how to do it, but I have the desire to say or read it sometimes. Would it be a mistake to do like a small puja, whatever I can, or read in the way I can, or should I be fearful of that and not do that?
No, you don't have to worry. That I know that there is the understanding, actually, with all the different scriptures, that it needs to be pronounced correctly. But the thing is, the Devi herself, at some point in the Chandi, will say, yes, the best thing is to sit and do the whole thing as a puja and the 700 verses and with all its preliminary hymns and all its hymns that come behind it. And if you don't do it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But she says then, if you can't do that, just do the 4 hymns in the Chandi. There are 4. And if you can't do that, then you do aparajita, meaning Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu. And it can be done, when they're talking about that, they're talking about mantric, the idea that mantras need to be pronounced correctly. But the Chandi can be done also in a purely devotional way. And it will never, there are some, I'll tell you, in India, there are some black magic tantrikas who can do it backwards because they think that somehow this will give them some kind of destructive power. But in this case, just doing it at all is connecting oneself with that divine, no matter what. So not destructive, and nobody has time to sit and do the whole thing, right? It takes several hours. And even if you're chanting it lickety, really quick, Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Vishnu, like Swami Tathagatananda used to do. He used to, the Swami in New York, he used to be a Chandi reciter, at least Saturdays, I think every day. But the way he did it was like this, Namaha. But his mind could go there. Right. And so just doing it, or even part of it, or stringing it out over many days or many weeks, no matter what, that's fine, I think.
Okay, thank you. A quick follow-up question. Can one get realization without the Kundalini aspect, without like making it rise? Can we, or is that like the third part? You said you didn't go into the sound.
Yeah.
Without going there, is it possible to get?
I like Sri Ramakrishna's answer to that, because people asked him that. And he said, you don't need to worry about these things because there are many paths to realization. And when realization happens, all those Kundalini rising kinds of phenomenon automatically happen, no matter what path you're on.
Thank you so much.
Okay, one more question.
Okay. Hello, Mataji. I actually had the pleasure of knowing Gitaprana Mataji from Sharadamat. So at a very early age, I'm from Kolkata. My name is Gaurav. My only thing is, since we are talking about Vedanta and how the Shaktas tradition probably means that we are trying to find a convergence in there. So all I can think of is I take Divine Mother as the kinetic energy, and Shiva, Lord Shiva, is the potential. He's pure consciousness, and when consciousness is moving, it's mom.
Yep. That's how I see it. That's generally how it's understood. Shiva is that divine equivalent to the concept Brahman.
Yes.
And remember, Brahman is not a thing. It's not an object. It's not a person. It's not a thing. So, Shiva is Brahman and Shakti is that dynamic aspect.
So, and I feel if I reach out to Divine in the form of Mother, which I do all times, she's among us at all times, right here with us. She's from right here. She is us. So the effects are very fast.
Yes.
I mean, I've experienced personally that. So that's.
Yeah, and by the effects may not be what our ego likes.
No.
That the mother is for transformation. If we pray to the mother for our liberation or our enlightenment or whatever, God realization, she'll help us. But in order to do that, she'll help us overcome the obstacles, which is what these stories are about.
Yeah.
All right, I think I'm over time.
Thank you.
One more.
Namaste. Swamiji. I just want a couple of things. One, I just wanted to ask you, because you are saying this is, it's a transformation. And with that transformation, and you said we are part of the creation. So is that corresponds to the Vishishtadvaita?
Yeah, in a certain way it does. Only the difference between the Shakta Advaitins and Vishishtadvaita is that in Ramanuja's Vishishtadvaita, he says every individual is an angsha of the divine, a part. And like Swami Vivekananda, the Shaktas will say every individual is the whole of the one. Now, it's hard to conceptualize because we're so used to understanding things as individuals. And if they're individual, how could they all be one? But that's the Maya. That's the Maya. There is no separation. There's only one. So that it is similar, but not exactly alike.
And the other thing is, you said in the Shakta, you have the Icha, Jnana, and Kriya.
Oh.
This corresponds to the, the three things in the, Advaita.
Icha, Jnana, and Kriya. Icha means desire or intent. Kriya means action, and Jnana means wisdom. In not just human wisdom, but the wisdom of enlightenment, the wisdom of the one. So those are the three aspects that make up the divine.
So is that corresponds to like Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas?
Yes. So in the idea, Icha corresponds to Tamas, meaning it isn't actually manifest, that it's the desire that is dark, meaning not dark bad, but it's unseen desire intending to be and become. Jnana, of course, is consciousness, and Kriya is action, which what the individuals, for the individuals, that the combination of Icha and Jnana make an individual, and the individual acts. That's what an individual is. Acts also means thinks. An individual moves.
But there, when you say individual, are we talking about ego?
Well, we're talking about ego at some point. For us, we're talking about ego. But any individual is a manifestation of energy, basically, of moving energy. And well, energy moves. That's what energy is. That's the whole definition of energy. It's dynamic. And so this energy moves and thinks and feels, and that's what we're talking about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gitaprana ji. We have one closing chant.
Okay.
Yeah, so just I want to say two things about the ancient prayer. It is every prayer in Sanskrit always ends with the Shanti. You know that. And right now, as you described about the Mahisha, I think the Mahisha is prevalent so much everywhere in the world. So let us pray this. Let the infinite universal peace prevail into the sky, earth, and waters. Let the infinite universal prevail, this peace prevail into the earth, water, and okay, yeah, earth, waters, and air. Let the infinite universal peace prevail into the plants, herbs, and tree. Let the infinite universal peace prevail throughout my being, let be. Om Shanti Shanti. Shanti.
Thank you very much, Gitaprana ji. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Hope to see you either there or here one day.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank
See
you.
Thank you, Mataji.
Jai Ma.
Mataji. Bye, Ma.
We have good stuff in
Good,
there.
Ma.
So you can all go over there and enjoy.
There's food, everyone.
Okay.